Okay.
All right, so I'm going to go over the welcome, teaching cooking classes as lunch and learns. Okay, so the first step, clearly, when you want to go and do a lunch and learn at a corporation is deciding what kinds of companies you want to target. So in your welcome email, you have this list. I'm looking right at the welcome email. So it's a good exercise for you to start thinking about where you feel most comfortable. If you've ever maybe worked at a hospital, go after healthcare workers. If you've ever worked in, a hair salon or something, maybe then you're going to go after salons. Really, they will bring you in. One of the best lunch and learns that I did that got the most clients for me was at a real estate office, actually. Now they didn't pay as much as a regular corporation, but they definitely, I got a lot of clients out of it. And it wasn't just clients for a 6-month program. I talked to them about doing the 3-day detox, and pretty much every single one of them bought it. So that was a good thing. All right. So then step 2 is you want to think about the people you already know, because it always, what they say, it's not what you know, it's who you know. If you write yourself a little list, because when you're trying to do things like this or you're starting your business, you miss the obvious things because it all seems so overwhelming. So if you just focus on who do I know and write a list, and then, start checking them off. So if you have a friend who works at, IBM or whatever, ask them, who's your HR person? That is how you're gonna get in. Maybe a company you worked at before, anywhere where you have a connection. So your first step is to obviously call them, call the HR department, and the list of reasons that they should bring you in are here. Obviously to promote good health. I'm not going to read them all. You guys have this. And then you want to tell them that you're going to be sending them a packet. And in your packet, you're not sending them your whole presentation. You're just sending them an intro letter. I gave you guys a pitch letter. And then you're going to just let them know, you can maybe put one recipe, the one that you have if you want, with your information on it, and a business card. If you're going to call on the company in person, then I would definitely have it put together. Oh gosh, sorry. Let me see if I can. I don't want to stop this recording. Okay, she isn't following. Okay, never mind. Sorry. Okay, so you want to have things on good like card stock and a nice folder. So if you're doing a follow-up phone call, that's when you can get a little more into the particulars. You can let them know that your average, first of all, I never offer a price to people. I ask them what's their budget, and they'll usually say to you, well, we usually pay, they might surprise you. They might say, well, for past presenters, we pay $800 an hour. You just never know. So if you can, put the ball in their court first. And if they say, well, we pay $50 an hour, don't take the job, clearly, because it's not worth it. The lowest I would do a lunch and learn for would be, the lowest I've ever done one is about $150. And then I ask them to reimburse me for the cost of food. Try to get all your shopping on to 1 or 2 receipts. And then just, when you send your final invoice, you put in how much your food was right in there. Now, I've never had a problem with them just adding that back in. And if it's a plant-based class, the food really is pretty nominal. You can feed a lot of employees. I usually keep it to about $50 or under $100 depending. Okay, and as I said, don't get discouraged if you don't hear back from them right away. I would only reach out to them 2 or 3 times. If you don't hear back, I'd move on, because otherwise you're just spinning your wheels. They could surprise you and reach out to you, but you can put your time in elsewhere. So once they do decide to go ahead with this, you're going to pick your time and date, obviously. You're going to want to rehearse yourself. I don't waste a lot of time rehearsing because I have the handout. I just make sure that I look it over and know what I'm going to cover. And if you want to add any talking points to the outline that you already have, that's your copy. So just write all over it. Write what you need to know to keep yourself on track. And if you have to write a big Q at the top of the page to just remind yourself to ask them questions sometimes, that's a good prompt you can do for yourself. So before your show, you're going to get, obviously you're going to do all your shopping and have everything packed, but you also want to make sure that you've printed out your handouts, printed out your recipes, you have your stuff entered into it. I always give a pen with to everybody when I do classes, because they have the recipes and they're going to take notes. And then that's like having a calling card. You know, it's got your contact information, and you never know. Most people save recipes, so they could have that indefinitely in their recipe book or box. And so it's a great thing to hand out, because like I say, they're usually not going to throw that away where they would throw out maybe a brochure. So what I do when I pack for a class is I lay out a couple of different, grocery bags. Usually, like for corporate, you're really going to only stick to one recipe. You're trying to go more for like a meal in a bowl type of class, because you don't want to get into a lot of different courses. You usually only have an hour, so you're trying to keep it simple. And I use those zipper bags that are like cooler bags. It's so much easier to pack than in coolers, because I can put them on my shoulders and walk into the company like that. So if you have they're cheap too, the little cooler bags. So I use those. I use those for my dry and for my cold stuff. Clearly, I put a little cooler, a ice pack in there. And then I bring extra bags that are tucked inside, so I can throw like my dirty dishes in there. Bring lots of rags when you go to do cooking classes, so that, you're wiping up and you don't have to keep trying to, it's just easier to keep that under control. And then if you have an extra bag, you can throw, your dish towels and your dirty stuff all into one bag. You just get it done when you get back home. Okay, so I said it's a good idea to also check your time for yourself, like as you're going, where you want to be. You're going to talk, you're going to demo, you're going to have the food. I always ask for a volunteer. Ask the HR department what they're going to provide. Most companies always have plates and silverware and cups. You rarely ever have to bring that. But if they say they don't have it, then, it's pretty cheap to just go to Costco and get, the paper plates, or, the hard stock paper. So that's how I do it. But they usually will provide that for you. Okay, so that's that. Let's see here if I can get back to. And all right, so here's your flyer. Now, when you're doing a corporate class, I'm going to ask my designer this week, and I'll send it to you, everybody. I am going to ask my designer to take the top part of this, right like this, and have it cut off so that you guys can have this image, and you can use it then for your private classes as well. It doesn't have to be corporate. And it's a good social media image. So I might even ask her if she could put a little field here so you could put your information. I'll see how if she can do that. So you clearly have this flyer to enter your information. So class being held at, I mean, like I said, you can do this for your personal private classes as well. But for corporate, you know, here it will just say like auditorium or, you know, well, sorry, it's going to class being held. I don't know why that sort of is like repeating. Okay. Well, you can take out a field easy. At least it's there. Better to have more than less. And then who they're going to, if they have to register. If they don't have to register, take that out also. And then you're going to enter your information down here in the class taught by. But you also want to make sure when you're talking to HR, because they might have their own flyers. They might not even want it, but it's great that you are organized and provide that to them. And then this is your handout. You're going to put your information up here, and you don't have to go over this whole thing, but if you want to, you can print a copy for yourself and clearly just go over the health benefits of these are stress-busting foods, and clearly people who work in corporate, that is a huge deal for them. So if you go over it, great. If you don't have time, then you're just going to hand it out, and I think they're going to love that. Okay, so here's your outline. Like I said, this is just me repeating, making sure everybody gets it. So you're going to have your paperwork in order. When collect a deposit, this varies company to company, but you can ask for a 50% deposit. So if your class is $250, you're going to ask them for $125, and then the balance will get billed to them. Corporate is different. When you're doing a private cooking class or for a group, I have them pay me that day or that night. When I get there, I ask them for a check or a credit card to pay the balance. But corporate doesn't do that. What corporate does is they give you terms. So you want to ask them are their terms, because some companies will want to take like 60 days to pay. So you just tell them that your invoice is net 30 and that you would like to get paid in 30 days. Some are really quick. Some will pay you in like 10 days. But you want to make sure you know what to expect. But I've never not gotten paid from corporate. But it also is great to take that deposit, and it's just professional, and then it pays for your food. And with the contract that you have, if you can let them know. I mean, if something happens and they have to reschedule, if they need to reschedule more than 2 weeks from the date, and if they just flat out wanted to cancel on you right before, then I don't give them their deposit back, because that's your schedule. That just, you could have had something else in there. So I would also have them agree on how many presentations. So if you're going to go do the Lunch and Learn and you're doing one class, that's great, but you want to try to, again, drive them to something else. So ask them, can I promote maybe my 3-day detox or my 30-day, healthy habits class, whatever mini program you have. I generally do the 3-day detox, or I drive them to a 6-week program that I have. I don't try to sign them up for the 6-month program. It's too big. It's going to overwhelm them. But some companies may want to. So you might want to design a campaign. I'm actually corporate wellness certified. If you want to find out more about that, you can just send me an email, because I will send you to the school that I trained at, Kelly Wellness Consulting. Love it. I would highly recommend that. And we designed 12-month campaigns, which was the biggest program you're going to do with corporate. This isn't necessary for you to get started. You just ask them if they want to do one lunch and learn, or I did have the series, and it's still available. If anybody wants to add on, if you only bought one class, you can still do the series. Just send me an email, because otherwise it's going to overcharge you. It would just be the $97 to do the difference. So if you decide you want, because it's good to say to them, I'll do 3 classes. So you really get a relationship with them. You're going to ask them also if they will allow you to collect the emails of the employees, because sometimes they don't want that. But if they're okay with it, then you're just telling them, I'm only sending out health tips and recipes and stuff. And so it's a good way for you to keep that relationship going with the employees. So you're clearly, as I said, you're going to have your contract, know what day you're going to get paid. So the day of the show, for yourself, you want to make sure you go over your outline, your handouts. If you have anything personal that is about your program, bring it. You want, like, I bring my cookbook. I sell cookbooks. If you have something that, if you do, you have to be careful. And again, you want to make sure it's cleared with HR. But, some of the coaches are, do oils, or they do a juice program, then just, if it's okay with them, you might be able to bring samples and sign people up for a little class or something. Just make sure you have it all determined ahead of time. So I don't bring assistants when I do corporate, because I always ask for a volunteer, but you can make that determination depending on how stressed you are, because the first time you might be a little more nervous. You may want to have someone with you. It's perfectly fine, to have an assistant, and just tell them you're bringing your assistant. Okay. So, and make sure that you let them know what you need. If you want electricity, make sure they know it. Tell them you need to have just like a folding table for your work area, or whatever they have. Ask them what the setup is going to be, so you don't go in there blind. And clearly you want to be rested, and bring your appointment book and your sign-up sheet. And okay, so this is what it's going to look like. Usually if you're starting at 12, you want to get there at 11:30 and get set up. When you're in the class, you're going to introduce yourself. You're going to tell them what you do. I like to tell a little personal story. And that doesn't have to be, how many you can say that how many about your family, it's up to you. But I think that a great personal story is if you've had any kind of health challenge, how you got yourself well, or even maybe someone in your family who, through the education that you now have, they got well. That's a really engaging story. If it's about the fact that, I sometimes share the story that, I was came from a trauma childhood and a stressed out mess, and got divorced and was unhealthy and miserable. And because I changed my whole lifestyle and my attitude, I got healthy. And then I learned how to eat better, and, with yoga and everything. So then they know what I'm about. That's up to you. You decide on how much you feel comfortable sharing. But the more, really, unless you're going on and on about some crazy story, they do really like to know what you're about, because somebody in the room is going to go, oh, wow, like she's talking to me. So, okay. You want to maybe ask your guests what kind of challenges they have, and that gets them talking, gets them engaged. So the first thing you want to do is, and I always try to have as much prepped beforehand. If you're going to be doing, and this, I'm giving you overall tips, not just specifically the recipes that you have here, but if you are going and, you got to cut onions and celery and carrots and all this stuff, you want to make sure that most of it's already cut, and you put it in the little, storage containers. Maybe you cut, like, just demo cut, how do you cut an onion? How do you, you know, cut the celery and maybe peel the strings off? If you're doing, like, give them some cooking tips. And if you can't think of any cooking tips, just go on Google and say, you know, 5 best cooking tips. Literally, you're going to get a ton of information, and pick 1 or 2. That's all you have to do to demo, to get them to have a kitchen experience. And the whole thing, I always use, I tell you guys, the propane burner. So it uses little cans of propane. I always bring an extra so you don't run out. I had that happen to me at a show one time. That was not good when I ran out of propane. Luckily, I had enough prepped stuff that I was able to move ahead. But you want to really have as much done as you can so that it moves it along quickly. And so you're going to also let them know. You're a health coach. You want to let them know about cutting out. When you're at corporate, you're going to be in front of some really bad eaters. And they're drinking coffee, and they're eating packaged food, and they're eating at their desk. You want to let them know that what they eat and how they eat, and by them eliminating, you know, the packaged and the third class that I usually do corporate, the meal planning class. So you don't want to get too into that right away. Right now on the first class, you're really just talking about how energy is, what you eat is going to increase or decrease your energy. So you can make sure, you know, you tell them about the stress busting foods. You have the handout, and maybe by them walking away from their desk and letting their food digest and chewing. It's all written here. And you guys know this, you're health coaches, so you know that that's really important for them. So you're creating the 1 dish meal. So there's like a salad and with the grains. And you can tell them that this is an easy thing to do as a make ahead thing. They can either put their salad in 1 container, or I like the mason jar thing where you put the dressing on the bottom and the grain on top of that, and then the salad, so it goes heavy to lightest, and then they just shake it up. So they love that. They love that tip. You can demo it if you want. And I always ask for a volunteer to be a runner so that they're engaged, and it makes your life a lot easier. And then again, if you have something prearranged with HR that you can move them to next. So the recipe that I had put with this corporate class is a quinoa grain recipe over the salad. It's a great meal in a bowl, but you don't have to, and let them know it's any other whole grain. I just stay away from gluten because there's so many gluten intolerances, myself included now. But this is great with either a farro, a brown rice, anything else that you would care to, millet that you want to do with it, and you let them know that that's how they can mix it up. So here's your list of ingredients. The sweet potato, it says roasted. I don't try to do that at the show. That's all done ahead of time. And then you're gonna, you can mix up the dressing in front of them if you want. Otherwise, you're just gonna, the ingredients are listed for them on their recipes. So, you know, you might want to make it up ahead also. And so if you bring your burner, you're going to toast your quinoa, and then you're going to, this is up to you because quinoa is 15 minutes. So you could cook it right in the class. But otherwise, just bring your quinoa already cooked and maybe just drizzle a little like olive oil or something and stir it up. That's completely up to you. If you bring it cooked, the greatest grain ever to bring to a cooking class is the farro, F-A-R-R-O. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but that doesn't stick together at all. And it's like you cook it like pasta, you drain it. So if that's something that you want to sub out, it's really easy. And then the only thing I really cook at corporate is this, where I saute the onion, celery, mushroom, and garlic, just because it smells amazing, and then it gets all tossed in, so it's easy. And then you're gonna demo little plates for them, depending on how many employees. Some of them, you may wanna make a great big plate for them. If they've got, 30 employees, you're gonna do a little tiny, like, a cake plate size. And obviously you're gonna put your contact information down at the bottom here. Okay, hang on, let's see what we gotta go to next. All right, so here's your business packet. This is where you keep track of everything. So you're gonna put the company name, if anybody referred you, who you're gonna, this is the same sheet that I use for private. So this would be same thing as guest, it's employee. You aren't charging them per person, you're just putting down the total. So you know your amount that you're charging, and then what your deposit was and your balance due. If you're bringing an assistant, this is a great place to keep track of it. If you paid them, obviously for corporate, you're not going to be having any press there, as in newspapers. So you're going to don't need the thank you. And so here's the recipes where you would put in 1, 2, or 3. I only do 1, like I said, for corporate. If you decide you want to add in something of your own, put it in here. So we're going to go through all this, the surveys, cards. This is whatever you want to do. Again, this is more for when you're doing your private. All right, and your shopping list. So here's your shopping list, and you're going to keep track of the items that you need to buy when you go through your recipe. Well, this is how I do it. I separate it. So here's your shopping list up top. This is stuff that you already have. You don't need to go out and buy a new salt and pepper and things like that. So you just put them down here, but make sure you guesstimate how much you're spending. If you're taking a bottle of your own, apple cider vinegar, and you're using a couple tablespoons, it's not that much, but maybe you put down 25 cents. Literally, you keep track of everything that you're spending money on, so that you have for your records how much you're making on this show, and then minus the cost of the food is how much money you made. And here's your pitch letter. So this is, everything in red is where you're gonna change it. So it doesn't look nice, but this is going to be printed. You're gonna do it on nice paper, and you're gonna put your logo, then everything here, anything red, you wanna change out. So it's saying, all that you've agreed on for them to work with you. And then here is your contract. So the letter goes first, that's just confirming, and then you send them the contract. If you don't need both, don't do both, but this is what I use to say, thanks for the opportunity to work together and with your proposal. And so you're gonna say that, what time you're getting there, just so they know. And then down here, you're gonna let them know. And you can use this also for private, but you're gonna let them know that it's a 1-hour class, how much you're charging, less the deposit. If you wanna change that, like I said, change it if you do 50-50. And then, as I said about the refund, if it's less than 11 days, I don't refund them. And you want to let them know, here it says that your terms are net 30 days. And then you're just going to sign it. And, okay, so I put one as a document and one as a PDF. So this one is unchanged. You can change the contact information, but the document one, you can change it up as much as you want. Like if you want to take out a whole block, go ahead. So I gave you both. And here's an invoice for you to put in the information here, the description, you know, nutrition for busy people, 1 hour. And so this is where you're actually going to bill them. I'm giving you a lot. You pick and choose what you want to actually use. Here's your sign up for more recipes and tips, where you're going to collect their email if they give you the go ahead on that. So here's a survey. This one's different than the survey that I use for private. It's a little more entailed, you know, rate their overall satisfaction, the value of the cooking demo, the recipes. This is if they're doing all 3 workshops. If they only do 1, then clearly they're not going to rate the other ones. And then at the end, because if you work with them maybe, you know, 2 or 3 times, there's been an overall campaign. And so you ask them more questions, like have they gotten more mindful, more energized, just gives a little bit more. And then if they have any other comments, and clearly you're going to customize that as well. And of course, I gave you this you can get right off of irs.org, but it's a blank one. You don't offer it up, but they're usually going to ask you. So you're going to put in, if you're a company, you're putting in your company information. If you're just an individual health coach working for yourself, you just put in your name, and you just put in that you're an individual sole proprietor, and your social security number instead of a federal ID number with your address. Don't even worry about this. I know whenever you see like government things, you think you need an accountant. You don't. This is just so that they have it for their records, and they can send you a 1099 at the end of the year. And I'm telling you, I've done some corporate that they asked me for that, and I didn't even get a 1099. So, but they want it. So, okay, I think we covered all of the forms. So, oh, Natalia did get on here. Okay, so I'm going to leave the recording going. If you guys have any questions, go ahead and jump in and ask them, and then I'm gonna, if you don't want to be recorded, then you can just, there's a chat button. If you hover down on the bottom, you can type your question in. So do we have any questions?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Do you have anybody that's allergic, like to onions?
You know, that's a great question, Consuela. I think that what you want to do is always ask before every single class you teach if there are any food allergies. Always ask that, doesn't matter what it is, even if you're not having nuts or anything. And then if you have that, or if you're really being kind, which I do a lot, you know, is there anybody who just really is allergic or really doesn't want them? And if you get that volunteer, then they'll help you. You know, you just make sure that it's going to be more work, but it's worth it to just separate it out. It's really, I'm not kidding, out of 30 people, you maybe get 2. So at least that's been my experience. Hopefully that happens for you too, and you don't get 15. But you want to try to customize it a little, because if they have an issue, definitely. So, and if you're allergic, or you don't like something in there, then you just either change it up, or I had mentioned to you before, if you want to have any of these recipes redone for a couple of ingredients, just let me know, and I'll ask my designer if she can swap some stuff out for you.
Okay. What I was wondering is if you ever had them sign a disclaimer.
Okay. I really don't. You know, you can ask HR again if they have anything like that maybe they would want to incorporate themselves, but I have not ever had to do that. So,
Okay.
Most people know what their stuff is, and they're gonna tell you. So I have a question on here. Is there a range of companies you target? Space requirements. So I'm not sure what range of companies means, but so, I have taught in little tiny cafes that have, oh my gosh, I think I had like a little 4-person table, that 2 pushed together. It was such a small area. And I don't know how, but you always seem to make it work. So some of the places I teach at, there's no kitchen no kitchen. So you're just there. And like I said, the greatest way to do this is to bring some of the big like plastic shopping bag, not like grocery bags, but like the totes. And then I just throw all my dirty stuff, like, scrape it in the garbage, but I throw it all into these bags, or put a garbage bag inside of it if you want to make it even easier for yourself. And because you're not going to probably have access a lot of times to water, you got to bring a jug of water. You get really creative when you're doing this. And don't pack. I had gone over this on our greens webinar. Don't pack the stuff that you use. Like me, in my kitchen, I use everything, ceramic, glass, and I was cast iron. I was bringing that to my classes when I first started, and I don't do that. I literally go to flea market. I buy every plastic, like great big plastic bowl I find. I have stacks of them because they're light, and I can stack them all inside each other, and they all go in one big tote bag. So you want to try to pack as light as you can. I used to use wood cutting boards and bring stacks of them. Now I don't do that either. I use those, like the little plastic thin cutting boards that are like, like ones for fish and vegetable and chicken, those little thin ones. And it doesn't matter. They're all different color, or they're for something different. This is for if you're doing like a regular cooking class. Corporate, you're not going to have people sitting there. It's demo. You're not going to have people cutting and stuff. So let me see. I can't read again. Not sure if I missed your answer before. How do you decide on the price? Okay. So the range is $200 to $600. So what I had said earlier is, if you once you get to that topic with the HR person, my policy is to put the ball in their court, and I say, what is your budget for doing a lunch and learn? And they might surprise you. They might say 500. They might say, 700, or they could really surprise you and say, $100, which would be pretty tough to make it worth your while. I had said earlier that the lowest I've ever done a cooking class for like a corporate setting was $150, and they also had to reimburse me for the food. So if I'm getting, generally I usually always get $250 or more, and that's pretty standard, $250. It's an hour. And so it is one of your easier classes to teach, because you don't have to do, like I said, whole meals, but you're giving them an education. You're a presenter. This isn't so much about, like I know we have some chefs on here. And if you're a chef, you're so used to like jumping through hoops and getting everything, prepped and ready on time, and everything is about the food. You have to kind of switch up your mentality when you're teaching things like this, because you want to make it more about the presentation and less about the food. The food is important, but the food is your prop to get them to sign up for your programs. And so the costs can absolutely depend on the amount of people that are there. If they have 50 people, you clearly are not going to do the class for less than 500, never, you know. So some of the classes that I've done, there's been 16, I don't know, they're usually not more than like 20, 25 maybe is like tops, but if it's a big company, that's great. It's absolutely great. I think it's wonderful, but then you're really doing a demo, and you know, technically a tasting size is 2 ounces. So you really only need to do that much, and maybe you just use little cups. So let me read this one. Does the cost depend on the number of people? So at the end, you are just giving them a little sample. Yeah. So it's really, you make the call. If that company and you decide that you want to do like a lunch and you're bringing in food, and I know that you're a chef, so if you're, you know, thinking I want to make it more about the food, okay, then, and if you're doing trays, then you have to add that into your cost, because you're going to have your presentation cost, and then you're going to have a separate cost of the food. I do more of a demo for lunch and learns. Again, lunch and learns are totally different than doing a class for, I mean, they're different, but they're not. There's pros and cons. When you're doing a lunch and learn, the biggest pro is you don't have to market this class, other than, you know, maybe giving them that flyer that helps them out. And I think that's great, that flyer, because now you're putting your information on it. It's going up at all the time clocks and email blast. But I definitely think it's way easier, because when you're marketing your own class, you know, you have to get it in the newspaper and write a press release. And does the cost depend on the number of people? So at the end, you are just giving, okay, right, thank you. And I am used to teaching small groups, and the people always take food home for dinner. Absolutely, yeah. And, you know, if you have a small company that you're doing this for, it's actually the smaller the better, because you really build this camaraderie. And if you have containers and you're letting people take stuff, oh my gosh, that's the greatest thing. So you decide what you're comfortable with. You know, if your thing is cooking and that's what you're about, then keep that as your thing for doing corporate. Go in as a wellness chef, and you're going in, you're a food educator, but you're a chef. And so what I gave you in that kit, you're gonna just tweak it so that it goes more on the food side. If you're not really that comfortable, because you know some health coaches are not that comfortable in the kitchen, but they want to be, and they want to teach this, and because this food's the greatest tool, because everybody has to eat, so everybody's your client. So if you're going and it's, you don't want to get like, you know, more cooking classes out of it, or you're really just using it for clients, then keep the cooking on the smaller scale, do more demo, and do talk more about benefits. So you're going to know after you go through one what feels right for you. And, you know, if you already are a chef, you have this, you know, hey, that's an advantage, absolutely an advantage. But it's an advantage, but it can also, you know, I don't want to say work against you at the same time, but sometimes you can get tricked up because you're so used to presenting and talking food that you forget to talk about your program if you're trying to drive them to be your clients. So you have to make yourself those notes all over your coach's outline of you know, ask questions or talk about my programs here. I had said, I think you got on a little late, I had said you want to make sure that you're sending them to a small program instead of inviting them to a 6-month program. I never do that. So any other questions?
Do you ever?
Yeah, go ahead.
No, but it was
Did you have a question?
yes. Do you ever see the place before you present, or how do you find out that was?
Oh my gosh, that's the greatest question. Thank you for asking it. Yeah, so I never I don't even do privates without taking a tour first. I always tell them that I'll be up a week before or a few days before, and it's only going to take you, 5 minutes. You know where to go. You know what door to get into. You've seen the kitchen. Yes, great question. I always do a run through beforehand. I think in 8 years, there was one time I didn't, and I was crossing my fingers like till my fingers were bleeding because I was like, oh, I can't believe I'm doing this, but I didn't have time. So, and it worked out just fine, but yeah, great. I definitely think that's the way to do it. You want to do a quick run through and see what they have. Oh, another good question. Okay, do I wear gloves? Well, I do usually wear gloves, but if there's a sink right there and I'm doing a lot of, if they happen to have a sink and I'm doing a lot of stuff and washing my hands, I don't wear them because I think the gloves, I have food safe, and I worked at, I was a cooking instructor for Whole Foods for a while. And so I know that that's like, proper protocol, but I also think that sometimes people are wearing the gloves and then they're touching all these things. So it's kind of a false sense of sanitation anyway. So if I'm doing private classes, I generally don't wear them, but you saw in the picture on the webinar, I had gloves on because there wasn't anywhere for me to wash my hands. So I bring extra gloves and then I'll just keep changing them out. So yeah. And especially if you're doing like recipes, like, in our greens class, the massaged kale salad, you don't want to be having that all over your hands. And so, yeah, good question. And gloves are cheap. I usually I don't bring the whole box. I bring a bag of them so I don't have to, like I said, I try to keep my load as light as possible. And plus, if you have any of the employees that want to help, I usually always have an employee, always one person who is the volunteer who's up there helping me, and then I have them put on gloves. So, great question. So, okay. Anything else? Okay, well, I think we, I always say, as my Nana would say, covered the waterfront. So I'm going to stop the recording, and thank you for being